Hello and welcome to Code Labs Academy's first Women in Tech event. My name is Jennifer and I'm a digital marketing manager at CLA. At CLA, we believe that education should be accessible to everyone, and that brings us to Women in Tech because while many women already have the opportunity or the chance to achieve their dreams, it still can be intimidating to start a career in an industry known for its male-dominated work environment. So in this series, we are giving 4 women the platform to talk about their experiences and their projects. And hopefully with these events, we can contribute to one or the other taking the plunge and seizing her dream job. But I don't want to reveal more at this point because after all, it's about Jitte and the story she has to tell today. Only 2 more organizational points. If you have any questions, just post them in the chat. We will answer them at the end. And we are recording the session so we can post it on our YouTube channel later. And now, hello and welcome, Jitte, and I will just say the stage is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Jennifer. And hi, everyone. Welcome to my talk. I actually want to start with an animation. And this is, of course, a bit of a joke, but I'm sure that many of you have heard of women in tech with bad experiences. And to be honest, I think it's really important to show those experiences, but I also think it's important to show good experiences. And therefore, today, I want to show you a good experience of being a woman in tech, my own experience, and show you an example of the amazing projects that you can work on in data science. So, who am I? I'm Jitte Dingenouts. I am a data scientist at IG&H for a bit more than a year now. IG&H is a consulting firm. They operate in the health sector, retail sector, and financial services sector. And I have a background in econometrics. For the ones who don't know what econometrics is basically a mathematics degree with a lot of programming. And we use these mathematics and programming skills to basically solve or apply to economic problems. But, let's start in this talk. I actually want to share 3 experiences with you. My experience in finding out what I wanted to do in the tech field, my experience in interviews and the job process, and then also my experiences as working within tech. So let's start with finding out what I wanted to do in the tech field. So here I put a picture of a lady on a computer. And this is because when I was young, I think I was around 8 years old, I apparently told my family that I wanted to become a computer lady. I still don't know what that meant back then, but at least I remember that I was still very excited to be on a computer. And also later in high school, I realized that mathematics was like a big puzzle to me. So then at least I knew that I wanted to go do something in the tech field. But, the tech field is very broad. So how did I know exactly what I wanted to do? Well, luckily, I had a lot of nice people around me that encouraged me to do internships. Because when doing an internship, you get to know yourself a bit better and you get to know let's say you see what you do like about work and more specifically what you do not like about your career or about your job. So I first did an internship at bol.com. Bol.com is basically the Dutch version of Amazon. It's the biggest online retailer in the Netherlands. And here I was working in the pricing team, but I did a lot of work together with the data science team. And my computer looked a bit like this. And of course, this is a bit exaggerated. My screen didn't completely look like this. If your code does look like this, maybe you need to do something on the layout because it's not very readable. But I realized that I was working so much on my computer that I didn't really see the real impact of the things that I was doing. And this was something that I was missing. So then I started doing another internship where I combined data science together with consultancy. And I realized that that is really the perfect combination for me. So I could be the true nerd, be a whole day busy on my computer coding, but at the same time also help the client further implement the models and really see the impact of the things that I was doing. So if you are not completely sure what kind of job you would like to do, I would really advise you to do internships or have coffees with people. I sometimes just reached out to random people on LinkedIn to just ask like, hey, your job sounds interesting. Would you maybe have some time to have a coffee together? And I would want to say, really don't be afraid to reach out to random people. Most of these people really see it as a nice break. They can talk about what they like about their job, maybe also things that they would like to see differently. And most of all, you just get more knowledge about the field. Now then, at one point I knew, okay, I need to go into this combination of data science and consulting. But then you have to start applying and start interview processes. So how did I prepare? Well, first of all, most of these processes have a very basic, let's say, structure. So first you have a round where you have to tell them about what you want to develop, why a career in tech, weaknesses, strengths, those kind of things. And this is something that you can really prepare yourself quite well. And then, of course, you sometimes have a round where you have to do mental math questions or a coding test. Now, if you are a bit insecure about your skills there are many links, websites that you can find where you can practice these skills. So I would also really advise you to just go out there, and that really helped me through my process. So for example, for my coding skills, I practiced on HackerRank. And for the ones who don't know that, it's a website where you basically get small puzzles and you have to solve that in code. And you can decide yourself if that is in Python or Java or another language. And that really helped me throughout my application process. And then usually the third round, or for IG&H at least, I received a case. It was a programming case that I could solve at home. I had 8 hours to finish it. And then later I had to go to the office to present the solutions to my case. And this is a way that IG&H combined the data science aspect and the consulting aspect in their interview processes. And I think for other companies, it will look in a similar way. Now, like I said, practice is very important, I think. But you might have also heard these stories where you have, for example, people that are applying to strategy consultants that practice over 100 cases. That is just insane. I think you spend so much time there. And of course, if that is what makes you feel comfortable, sure, do it. But in my opinion, you don't really need that. At the same time, I also want to say that, interviews cannot be perfect. Really see interviews also as a way to develop yourself even more. That's also how I always perceive them. So for example, I had this interview, I think it was for McKinsey. I had to do a HackerRank test, and it was very difficult. And I remember there was this one question that was so difficult, and I got stuck there. And I remember just sitting there, and I was starting to feel very down and insecure. And if I look back on it now, I should have never wasted so much time on that question. I should have just said, hey, you know what? This one is maybe not really my question. Let's skip it and go to the next one. So that is also something that I took from that test. But another thing that I learned as well was I had another interview. And I remember that when I got the email or the agenda invite, I saw that I had an interview one-on-one with a woman. And I thought, oh, that is nice. I looked on her LinkedIn profile. She looked very friendly. Maybe she will resonate with me because she's a woman in tech. I want to be a woman in tech. And then I went into the interview. 2 minutes later, I realized she is tough. And she was not that friendly at all. But I want to say, try to go into every interview with an open mind and without any prejudice. Because even if you know that you are going to be having an interview with someone that is very high up in the company, and it's a man or a woman, don't freak out. You don't know the person. Even if you look at their LinkedIn profile, you really don't know how they are going to be like. And also, remember, you are not just showing what you are capable of to them, but remember even more so that you are figuring out yourself if you even want to work there. And if it doesn't work out, then maybe it's not the right place for you. That might also be the case. And to be honest, I didn't have a negative experience being a woman during interviews. And of course, the two experiences that I showed were maybe not super positive, but I try to see them as positive as possible. And I don't think my experience was like this because I was a woman. My experiences were like this because I just rolled out of university. I was just, let's say, not a student anymore. So everything was new for me. Of course, you're going to make mistakes. It's just a learning process. So then, you did all these interviews, and you maybe get some offers. I got a few offers. Now, how do you make a decision? And to be honest, at first, I really thought, I need to make the best decision. I need to make the best decision. And I'm a really bad person when it comes to making decisions. So this was a very big thing for me and very difficult for me. But in the end, I chose IG&H. And why did I choose IG&H, actually? Well, first of all, IG&H really made me feel valued as a person. So their interviews didn't even feel like interviews, even though everything was online, because I was doing all my interviews in the COVID times. So we had to do it online. But my interviews with IG&H really felt like I was just talking to people that I could have a beer with afterwards, which is quite a strange feeling to have if you are just doing your interviews and trying to look for a job. Another thing that really stood out to me was that they would call me after an interview to tell me that I could go to the next round, but also to give me feedback on my current round. So they would say, hey, we really like this about you and this as well. Maybe for the next round, try to focus a bit more on this, for example. And that stood out a lot to me because IG&H was the only company doing that. And then in the end, I just realized, I always had the feeling that IG&H was the right decision, but I was too afraid to make the best decision. But I don't think there is a best decision. So even if you would make a decision, let's say after 1 week or maybe a few months, you realize this is not my job. I don't like it. I don't like the environment. I want to leave. So what? So what if that happens? It's your life. You need to find a job that you like. You need to find work that you like. And if the first job that you have is maybe not the one that you are looking for, then that's fine. Or even when it happens later on in your career, of course. So then I decided to go for IG&H. And I rejected some of the other offers that I got. And after, I think it was 3 weeks, I got a message from a recruiter from one of the companies that I rejected their offer from. And it sounded something like this. Hey, Jitte, you have a very nice profile. Would you be interested in this vacancy? And I looked at the message and I was like, I'm not sure if you forgot, but you made me an offer a few weeks ago. So at that moment, I knew that for that company, I was just really going to be a number. And also how important it was for me to really feel valued as a person at the company that I was going to work for. So in this process, try to see what feels right. Also, maybe after you got some offers, maybe you're still not sure, just ask if you can have another coffee with some people that are working at the company or in the team that you would be working at. That's really not a bad thing to do. If you're not completely sure, then just ask for it. So then I made the decision to work for IG&H. And well, what is my experience there? So first of all, I really enjoy the fact that we work together with consultants that are specialized in a specific sector. So for example, right now, my project, we are working for the retail sector, and I'm working together with a consultant from the retail department. And it's very nice because she brings all the knowledge from retail, I bring the knowledge from the data side, and we really try to make a nice solution together and see where our ideas match to make, let's say, the perfect product for the client in the end. And I think that's really nice. Also, at IG&H, they have a very people-first mentality. So, for example, let's say you've done a few projects and you realized, this type of project is not really something for me. Then that's fine. Then they will take that into account when they are assigning you to a next project. So they are really trying to put people first there. And also, it's a very fun and social environment. So I remember that when I decided to go for a career in the tech field, that at first I was a bit afraid that, maybe there are some people that are not really into the fun and social aspects like I am. But in the end, you will always find the kind of people that you are looking for. And I just really enjoy my daily work at IG&H. And I want to point out one experience that really stood out to me. So I was working on this project for a client in the financial services sector. And I was part of the data science team there. And I think we were roughly 3 people in that team for that project. And at one point I was just working and I got a Teams call from one of the partners at IG&H. And he was in a room with someone, a man that I didn't know, and he introduced himself. It was the CFO of the client company that I was working for. And I tried not to freak out because I was like, well, first of all, this partner is calling me. And second of all, now I'm in a meeting with 2 people that are very high up in a company. And they were asking me questions like, yeah, you are part of the data team. What do you think we can do more with this data? Why do I see this kind of numbers? And what would I need from them to make it even better? And then I realized it doesn't matter that I am a woman. It doesn't matter that at that point I was only 3 months in the company. So I was still very young. I didn't have much experience. But they wanted to hear what I had to say. And I thought that was a very cool thing to mention. But I think you are not only hired for the role that you apply for. So I think you are hired for who you are. So for example, next to my project work, I also do some side projects. And this already started from the beginning. So for example, when I was 2 weeks in, I told my boss of the data science team that I really wanted to organize a volunteer day for the whole company, where every colleague was, let's say, allowed to just do something good for our community, for the environment. And he said, okay, you can just go talk to her and then, see what comes from there. So sure. So I pitched the idea to her and she was like, this is great. A really good idea. Let's just start writing a proposal and then you can pitch it to the partner. And I looked at her and I was like, okay, I'm going to pitch it to the partner. I'm only in the company for a few weeks, but I really got that freedom to do that. And I think that is really cool. So then I pitched the idea to the partner after being in the company for 1.5 months. And now we are actually organizing this event twice a year. Originally, we said, let's do it once a year, but then the partner liked it so much that he was like, no, Let's really embed it into our culture. Let's do it twice a year. So that is what we are doing now. And there are other sorts of projects that you can, take on if you're interested in. I'm sure every company has this sort of possibilities. So also try to look for that and just be creative. What really gives you energy. So, for example, another project that I worked on was for Orange Babies. That was a pro bono project. And Orange Babies, for the ones who don't know what it is, it's an organization that is helping women and their babies that have HIV. And most of their cash flows or money flows came from physical events. But during COVID times, it was not possible anymore to organize these kind of events, of course. So they asked us to basically help them find a new way of raising money for their fund. And I think it's just really amazing that I can combine my work with these kind of projects. So I'm very happy to do that. But I think one of the even more cool things to do is something that you can really do with data science. So I want to go into an example of how you can create impact within data science. And this is about floods. So here you see many articles about Kenya and Uganda, about floods that happened there, and about, let's say, the impact that they made. Now, in the most recent years, the amount of floods has increased rapidly. This is mostly explained due to climate change. But what is also very, let's say, sad is that, of course, the population is growing, but because of that, the impact of the floods is becoming larger and larger. And luckily, there are organizations like the Red Cross that are trying to help people in flooded areas. And if they would know beforehand if a flood is going to occur, they can evacuate the inhabitants or send resources to lower the number of people that die or get injured. And this is actually one of the projects that I did for my thesis. So I worked together with the Red Cross to build a model that can predict floods. And I want to tell you a bit more about how we did that. So we had information on the impact of the flood. So when did a flood occur? Information on river discharge, which is basically the volume of water that is passing through the river per second at a certain point, rainfall, and soil moisture or different levels. But besides that, we also had some additional information. So for example, vegetation, because that can actually, let's say, extract some water from the ground or capture some water that is falling from the clouds, from the rain, such that it goes slower to the ground. Now, what was the approach here? And maybe before we start, at the Red Cross, there were actually two sort of teams. You had the hydrologists and the data scientists. And one of the questions that the Red Cross asked me is to see if one big model would perform better than one model for every region in Kenya and Uganda. And the hydrologists thought that the latter would work better because they were saying that every hydrological system is very different. So we cannot combine all this information because then those specific information goes lost. And on the other hand, we had the data scientists that said, more data is more accurate forecasts. So that is one of the things that I was looking for in my thesis. And you can imagine most of this data came from satellites or sensors. And the impact data was even scraped from news articles. So they were looking on the internet to see when did the flood occur and where did it occur. But most of these things were also registered manually. So there was quite some noise in the data. And one way to denoise your data is by using a wavelet transform, especially if you expect your data to have some sort of wave signal. So that's one thing that I did. But then you can also imagine floods do not occur that often. So there was a huge imbalance in our data. And what I did to basically overcome that problem is that I made sort of intervals of days. So we had the data at daily level, but instead I made intervals of, I think it was 5 days, 3, 5, and 7 days to see what would work best. But then still we had a huge imbalance in the data. So then we did some data cutting. We said, okay, let's look at all the information 2 months before a flood occurred and 2 months after a flood occurred to see how, for example, the rainfall would differ across that period. And then I used some different methods to forecast if a sale is going to occur in a certain window or not. So first of all, I used the support vector machine. That was mainly for the models that were only focused on one region. And then I used a long short-term memory network for the big model. And the big model, for the ones who don't know, that is actually a neural network that takes into account past information. So it can take into account information, for example, what happened a week ago with the rain. Was the rain very high? And then you can use that in the network. And I'm not going very much into how those models work. If you're curious about them, though, maybe we can do another talk and I will explain there how they work. But for now, let's go to the results. So the first result, it is better to create one model than one model per region. So the data scientists here were right. Eventually, you can always do some sort of, let's say, data transformation and try to still take into account some information at region level. But this was one of the results. And besides that, we reached an accuracy of 73%, which is quite high, I would say. But I must say at the same time, the most important regions, the regions that experienced the most floods, had to be excluded from this model. And that is because some of the information that we were using was not reliable. So, for example, information on river discharge in regions that were close to a lake or to the sea were not reliable. But those are the sort of districts that experience the most floods. So that is also something that they have to improve in the model soon. But you might wonder, what is the status of the flood forecasting model right now? So during my research, I saw many opportunities to improve the model. But for me, it was just a thesis topic. So at one point, it was also enough for me. I had to continue. But right now, there's actually someone who is building upon my thesis and trying to improve. So, for example, they will also look at using satellite imaging to see when there was a flood and when there was not, to remove potential noise from the impact data. And eventually, of course, they might also use this model for more regions, have more data, and then maybe the model performs even better. So they're still trying to improve, and because they see that the, let's say, points of improvement that I saw in my thesis are doable, or most of them, they first want to implement those. But I hope in some time they can really implement this model and help people in, let's say, areas that are likely to be flooded to a tremendous amount. Now, I want to end my talk by this picture. And I'm not sure if people know these three ladies. It's from a movie called Hidden Figures. And these women were working at NASA and were only doing calculations, even though they were capable of so much more that you will also see in the movie. If you haven't watched it, I really recommend it. But these ladies were put into boxes. And I just want to show this picture to also show you that the world has changed a lot since then. There are also people that have good experiences in the tech field. And I really hope that my good experience in the tech field encourages you to also pursue a career in tech. Thank you. Now the floor is open for questions.
I'm back as well, and I just want to say thank you so much for your presentation and the very interesting insight in your personal as well as in your career life. I think it's, well, at least I was very interested in that, so I just assume that probably our attendees liked it as well. And I actually already have a question for you.
Let's hear it.
I mean, you already talked about it a little, but just to sum it up, so you talked about how you combine your passion for consulting and data science, but also about social impact. So how closely is this combination linked to your day-to-day tasks?
Yeah, good question. So like I said, most of the things that I'm doing next to my work are, let's say, more focused on the social or environmental impact. But it's also possible to do client projects that have a social impact. So for example, at IG&H, we also did a project for an organization that was helping in the COVID situation. So they were basically organizing where do patients have to go, to which hospital, how do we divide them? And we were also part of that. So that was a huge social impact there. But we do many pro bono projects too, like the ones for orange babies. A few months ago, I did another project for a hospital where they actually wanted to build some sort of dashboard, and they really wanted to start, let's say, building their patient database in a good way. So they're also helped to, well, basically explain how you can do that in a good way. And we also built the dashboards. So there are, for me, in my day-to-day work, enough possibilities to do that. And that's also why I'm so happy where I'm working right now. So does that answer the question?
Yes, I think so. I mean, if not, please write in the chat, but I think it was a pretty good answer to the question. However, we have another one. Someone says, I'm an Android developer and I'm interested in data scientist's profile. I learned and built a few deep learning models related to tuberculosis disease. Is this good to change the profile?
Let's see, to change the profile. So you want to switch to be a data scientist then, I think. I think that is a really good case. That is exactly what you could do as a data scientist. So that would be perfect, yeah. And especially if that's something that you would like to work in, also the, let's say, the social aspect or maybe the medical aspect that you like of it, sounds like a good thing for sure. Amazing. But you could also do it as an Android developer maybe, but I would say it's more into the data scientist profile, but maybe you can combine it. Maybe you can build some sort of app or website, and then you can combine both.
Yeah, everyone do it.
All right, thank you so much for this. I think someone isn't muted anymore. Just put it back. If you have any questions, just write them in the chat, please.
And also, if you have any own experiences, let me know. I'm also curious to see what sort of experiences you have been through, or some things that maybe you're struggling with. Also, if you are curious for some links on the mental math questions, please let me know. I can send you some links. Just add me on LinkedIn, and we can discuss that further.
So we have two more questions. The first one is, what is the most challenging phase in a data science project?
Good question. I think, first of all, it is really understanding what a client wants you to do. So sometimes the client themselves don't even know yet what it is that they are really looking for. So that is something that is really difficult, because if your client doesn't really know what they want, then how are we supposed to really build a solution to that? So that is one challenging phase. And also, of course, gathering and cleaning all the data. I remember in my university, we always had these cases and the data was completely clean. Everything was filled with information. But in reality, that's not the case. So that is definitely a challenging phase, I would say. The whole building phase of models, that is, in my opinion, quite doable. And of course, you are facing some challenges there sometimes too, but most of the times those are then caused by the data. So I would say, especially the starting phase there is most difficult.
Thank you. And the next one is, I want to make a change in my career. I have fallen in love with technology, but I don't know where to start. Could you give me some tips or info, or a place you recommend doing a course for beginner? Well,
first of all, really nice that you want to make a change in your career and that you've fallen in love with technology. It is very overwhelming, I can imagine, where you want to start. Now, of course, technology is quite a broad aspect. So let's say you are interested in going into data science. Then maybe you could start by looking up some courses, like you already said, online. There are many online courses that you could follow. There are many organizations that also help you to develop yourself, like Code Labs Academy as well. And I would say just try to see what you find interesting, because the technology field is so broad. And at one point, you cannot do everything. So you need to find the niche that you are interested in. But there's, for example, a website called, what is it called again? Data Camp, I believe it's the name. There you can find many online courses. Also, Azure, Microsoft Azure has a lot of courses that you could do. Some of them, I believe, you have to pay for, but if it's really something that you're interested in and you want to make the switch, I would start there. And don't be afraid. I think it's really cool that you already made the decision that you want to take the switch. And I really wish you a lot of good luck there. If you still want to talk a bit more about it, please just send a connection request on LinkedIn, and I can see if I can help you in any other way there.
Thank you for that. And I might add that we have different info sessions available. They are completely for free. So just feel free to check out our website or social medias, and you will also find some information regarding to info sessions or boot camps.
Cool.
And there are so many more questions. I think these two kind of go together. So someone says, I'm not good in math, but my coding skills are good. And then someone says, do you need to be really good at math to do data science, or is 70% good enough? What do you think, Jitte?
Yeah, a good question. I would say, you always need some sort of mathematics to also understand what the models in data science do. If you don't really understand what the models do, of course you can apply them, but maybe then you might apply them to a situation where they're not really correct for. But also define really good at math. I know a lot of people in my environment that were not really good at math, but they are still pursuing a career in tech because they are doing the things that they like. They are doing things that are not, let's say, full mathematics, but they learn the parts of mathematics that are important for the models that they use. So I think that you can definitely still do that, but I would also encourage you to try to understand how the model works. And for that, you might need some mathematics, but it's not, let's say, the dry mathematics that you got in high school.
Right, next one. Someone says, I'm new to tech, currently enrolled in an accelerated master's program for cybersecurity networks. What do you think is the best point of entry into the field aside from education? I don't have a network in this field and 10 years experience in the field of real estate. I did try to use my prior experience in the Navy on my resume working with radars and sonars, but doesn't seem to be getting very far.
Okay. A very broad resume, really cool to start with. So I think that you should just, try to see what kind of companies you find interesting. Most companies organize events, or organizations that are active within the tech field organize events that you can go to. Think about in-house days, think about workshops. I would definitely encourage you to go there and just talk to the people that work at those companies. And what I usually did when I went to those kind of events, I would just, first of all, try to ask all the questions that I had. Also think about questions beforehand a bit. And then I would just add these people on LinkedIn. And if I was really interested, I would shoot them a message on LinkedIn and just ask, hey, can I maybe grab a coffee with you? And I think there are not that many people that just do that. So by doing so, you really stand out. And I think then you already start building your network at or within companies that you are interested in, and you will also build your network further with people that already work at those companies. So I would suggest you to do that. So to go to events or just reach out to people. I think that is the best starting point. So already being here is a great step, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. And maybe you can also check out meetup.com. There are different groups, and also as Code Labs Academy, we also have some groups there. And usually you should find people with the same interest on Meetup as well.
Good one.
Okay, next one. We still have a little bit time left. Do you think that it's easier to switch from software engineering to data science, having a background in math, stats, and machine learning?
Let's see, easier compared to switching from data science to software engineering then, or?
I think that was here. No, that was it. It was the same person who asked for the most challenging phase in data science projects.
Okay. Well, let's say you have a background in mathematics, stats, and machine learning. Then if you want to go to data science, if you don't already have that, then you have the perfect background. And to be honest, for software engineering, you will also have, I think, a good background, and you might have to, learn some new things there, but I'm not a software engineering expert, so I cannot say much about that. But for data science, you have the perfect background, I would say. So that might be easier to switch from, indeed.
Right, then I hope maybe we can finish all of them. I'm not sure. I'm finding it hard to make the transition. What is a realistic timeline in gaining the necessary skills?
Yeah, that is a good point. I think it really depends on how far you are already. What is the level of your skills right now? Also, how much do you already know what you really want to do? And yeah, it really depends where you're coming from, of course, but I would also try to take it slow. Just don't rush things, because if you rush things, then in a month time, you are not going to remember much from the things that you learned 1 month ago. So just try to, let's say, spend every week an X amount of hours on trying to gain the necessary skills, and then just see how much energy that gives you or how much energy it takes from you. And then try to see if it is sustainable like that, if you can build it up if you want. And then you can, I think, much easier find, let's say, a timeline for yourself. But you have to realize, of course, there are people that did a whole study on a certain topic or a certain skill, a certain degree, that you cannot just learn all the skills within, let's say, 1 week. But just try to see what fits for your agenda, I would say, and don't go too fast.
Great. And I would say one last question, and then I feel like we have to end this meeting or this presentation. But yeah, let's go with the last one for now. To enter the data science field, please tell us essential skills like
Kaggle.
Yes.
Yeah, Kaggle is a very good place to practice as well. So it's already great that you know about that. Let's say essential skills for the data scientist field. Of course, programming. You don't have to be perfect or amazing in every programming language. Most languages that are used, or that I use at least in my daily life, is Python. So just try to see which one fits you best. Also try to look at the vacancies for the sort of jobs that you're interested in, and then you can start practicing there. Besides programming, I think it's also very important that you can, let's say, analyze the data in a good way. So are you seeing, let's say, certain outliers? Can you find out where it's coming from? So a bit more the data analysis part there. Other skills, I think it's also important to, ask questions if you don't understand what is happening. If you're, for example, if you got some data from a client and you have to, let's say, give a certain solution, or you have to do a certain analysis, if there's something that you don't understand, don't be afraid to ask, because if you're not sure, you cannot give the right solution there. So that is definitely something as well. I think those are the most important ones, I would say, but I'm sure I'm forgetting some.
Thank you so much for your advices and for your presentation, and also the very, I would say, personal story you told us today. And with that, I would just thank everyone for being here today. And I think Jitte already mentioned that you can feel free to text her on LinkedIn, but also if you have more like general questions, also feel free to just text us to social@codelabsacademy.com. And we are also happy to answer your questions. And maybe if it's a question that's interesting for more people who attended to this presentation today, we would create an email and send it out to everyone with the answers. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being here, showing your interest, for making the switch, for the ones that are making the switch now, and for asking the questions. I really hope that you are going into a career that you like with a lot of confidence. And I hope that my story helped you a bit to also show the good experiences of women in tech. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.